Recently on this channel I've been making a lot of shop projects. They are heavy, they're hard work, and they take a lot of planning. So I started getting the urge to build another guitar. So luckily for me, the same time that I was thinking that, Fishman reached out to me and said, can we send you some pickups for your next build? And I was like, yeah. So they've sent me some Greg Koch signature Tele pickups. These are the Gristle-Tone Fishman Fluence pickups. It's an all-in-one kit that fits into your Tele. Now I'm really interested to see what this looks like, but I've already got a Tele, so I'm going to do something a little bit different, and you'll see what that is in a second. And then the other thing I'm going to do new today is start my first fabric top guitar. I've been thinking about doing a fabric top for a while. I've seen a way online that I think is pretty doable, so let's give it a go and see what we think. I must warn you though, the fabric is pretty out there, so be interested to get your thoughts on that as well.
So the first thing I need to do before I get started on this is to make a template. Now one thing I've noticed when watching bands on TV at festivals and things like that is that there's been a real trend over the past few years for offset guitars. All the cool kids have them, and I don't have an offset guitar. So I decided to download a Jazzmaster template, which I'm then going to cut out on the laser. So we're going to end up with a Jazzmaster body, Telecaster neck and pickups, which is then going to give us a Telemaster. Now this laser is pretty damn cool, and one of the main reasons that I got it is to cut out guitar templates. Now unfortunately it's just that little bit too small to cut out most guitar bodies in one pass. I think for this one, if the template was 2 centimeters narrower, then I would have been able to fit it on, but it's not, so what I'm going to have to do is to cut this in 2 halves and then stick them together. So for this original template, what I'm doing is just cutting out in 6mm MDF, and then I'm going to transfer it onto 12mm MDF for my final template. Each half takes about 2.5 minutes to cut out, and took me just a little bit longer to work out how to split the template in half without ruining my design. I'm not exactly sure on the science of what's going on here, but it does a good job. And there's no sawdust, which is great. Just vaporized MDF gas, and that's probably fine. It's exhausted outside, don't worry. Now we've got our 2 halves, hopefully they match up, and it's looking good. Now the kerf on this laser is about 0.1mm, so there is a tiny little bit that's been removed in between this template, but it's so small that I'm not going to worry about it. Now I've got the template started, it's time to start thinking about the top. And as I said at the beginning, we're going to go for a fabric top here. Now, I was recently watching Milehouse Studios, which is a great YouTuber if you're interested in guitar building. If you haven't checked him out, I definitely recommend it. I got this idea from him, and I will leave a link in the description so you can go check out how he does it. But basically, his video was the one that gave me the confidence to give it a go myself. So essentially, rather than applying the fabric to a completed guitar body, we're going to start with some 3mm MDF, and then apply the fabric to that, lay resin over the top, and then cut that out and stick it to the rest of the guitar body. We can hide the edges with binding, so it should hopefully end up looking pretty smart. So what I'm doing here is just using some plywood to make a little barrier for me to pour the resin into. And is plywood the best option here? Probably not, but I had some strips of plywood laying around, so we're going to give it a go and hope that we don't get resin all over the floor. I must say, it's so cold in my garage that the glue is not wanting to flow, so that's why you see me taking it so long to get it out of the bottle. Time to bring out the fabric, and there it is. I was thinking, if you're doing a fabric top, you got to do a fabric top. Now, everyone does paisley, that's been done. So I spent about 5 minutes looking for weird fabric online, and I came up with this. It's got screaming demonic melting ice creams, pumpkins, skulls, squid thing, I don't know. It's eye-catching. It could look awful. Wait, that's not a squid thing, it's brains, I think. Now to get started, the first thing we need to do is glue the fabric down to the MDF backer board. So you need to make sure you're using a white glue, like a PVA based glue here. You don't want to use Type Bond or anything like that, which is yellow glue, because the white glues are the ones that are going to dry clear, and ultimately that's what you want if you want to be able to see your fabric. And as you can see, I took the glue into the house for a few hours, so it was a bit more movable and I could actually get it out of the bottle this time. Gotta say, when I started 2025, I didn't think a pink, ice creamy, melting pumpkin guitar was on the cards, but it's funny how life works in mysterious ways. So after playing around and stroking the fabric for a while, I could start to feel the glue coming through, so we knew that it was seated properly. Now I've got to go for the really counterintuitive bit of covering the whole thing with another layer of glue. Now this is important because obviously when you pour epoxy, the main thing you need to worry about is bubbles. Now if you pour epoxy onto fabric, you're just asking for the bubbles to cling to that fabric. So what we're doing here is essentially just sealing it and hopefully getting a nice clean surface that the bubbles aren't going to stick to. And it should make the resin pour a little bit more straightforward. Now after listening to that, you might think I know what I'm doing, but as you see, when I actually pour the resin, that might not be the case. It was around about this point that I started losing confidence in this plywood holding the resin in place, so I just decided to gaffer tape the life out of it. With it being so cold outside, I probably am going to have to move this indoors for the resin to set, so I really don't want this leaking out all over the dining table. So I came back later that night, and as you can see, the glue is dried clear and we can see the fabric in all its glory. Now it's time to pour some epoxy. So I picked up this kit off eBay. It was about 20 quid for a 1 litre kit, and almost immediately I started doing something wrong. It's just like a habit. When you pick something up in your workshop with the paint or whatever, the first thing you're going to do naturally is start shaking it up. Now as I watch this back, I'm just thinking, what are you doing? You're just adding bubbles. I'm going to mix it up anyway, but I started pouring it out and could see quite a few bubbles in each of these bottles, so probably wasn't the sensible thing to do. Next time I would do it differently. So I'm weighing out here. When I started, I was aiming for about 600ml just to see how I went, but then I just decided to make the full lot. So in the end, I have put the full litre across this top. That's probably around about right. It's only the second time I've done an epoxy project like this. First time I made one of them bottle cap bars and I didn't mix it enough and it just was gloopy and it never set. So I'm making a point to definitely mix this properly this time. Look at that. More bubbles than the 2008 financial markets. I was starting to get a little bit panicked here because it did look like there was an awful lot of bubbles in there, and how was I going to get them all out? Now you may have noticed that there's a hairdryer there. I do have a heat gun knocking around somewhere, but it's under about 5 years worth of crud, so I'm not going to find that. In a pinch, you can just steal the missus's hairdryer, as long as you make the strangers on the internet keep it a secret from her. So there's two strategies I'm employing here. First of all, trying to heat the bubbles up to pop them, and second of all, when that's failing, just trying to move the bubbles to the outside so I've got a nice clean bit in the middle. Both of them, after spending about 20 minutes doing this, definitely was making a big improvement, so we were pretty much where I wanted to be, and we decided to leave that overnight. Now that kit took about 24 hours to set, so while I waited for that, I decided to work on the template, which is transferring from the 6mm that I carved out on the laser to 12mm ply, which is also going to be in one piece. So to stick these two pieces together, I'm just going to use some gaffer tape and try and put a bit of tension on just to make sure that gap is closed up nice and tightly. The laser does give really accurate results, so it's a nice clean finish there, so you can actually get a really good seal across these two pieces, which is good. Quick flip over to check it still looks like a guitar. Nice. And then we're just going to bust out the double-sided tape so we can stick this to the 12mm MDF. We can start carving out our proper template. Now I can head over to the bandsaw and start cutting this thing out. Now in trademark fashion, I've not trimmed down the MDF properly, and I've got a massive bit of overhang on the end, which is causing me problems. If I have to rotate it towards the camera, it hits the tripod, and if I rotate it away from the camera, it's too wide for the throat of the bandsaw. So eventually, I finally cave and trim down the MDF template, so it's actually manageable through my bandsaw. One of these days I'll start doing things properly the first time round. Not anytime soon, but one of these days. So we've got the cut down to within about 5mm of the template, so now we can take it over to the router table to finish it off. It's the first time I'm getting to use my new router table properly. I can already tell it's going to be a game changer for me. It's not 100% finished, I still need to add an emergency stop to it. As you can see in a minute, that might be handy. Don't worry, you're not about to see me lose a finger or anything. At least not this week. And there we go, we now have a nice new template for our Jazzmaster body. Now as you notice, I've not put any templates on for the pickups or anything like that. I can use this as essentially a bit of a master template for the body, and then I can have other ones for the pickup selections that I want to use. So for this one I'm using Telecaster set of pickups, but if I want a different configuration in the future for another build, then I can just throw something on the laser and pull off some other pickup configurations. Now as if by magic, the resin has set this time. I've actually mixed it properly and the fabric top is looking good. So now what I just need to do is mark it out so I can get this thing roughed out on the bandsaw. I haven't left myself a huge amount of room here, and obviously I want to try and keep this thing fairly straight so the pattern is lined up with the guitar. And I can't find a Sharpie, so I'm using a brown felt tip to draw onto epoxy. You'll know when I've made it on YouTube when I start using Sharpies. I mean, just even suitable pens and pencils in general. You can barely see it, but my bandsaw's got a light, so I'm hoping I can follow this line roughly. There is some proper concentration faces and squinting going on here. I was getting quite close to the line at some point, but I managed to get around in one piece, and I didn't cut into the template because that would have been a disaster. I mean, I can't think of seeing many like it, so, there's that. You know the drill, stick the template to the project, take it to the router table, and clean it out. Now, I could have waited to do this when it was actually on the body, but it's not a very good end to a YouTube video to have it roughed out, so I thought I'd come around, clean this thing up, and it is going to go around the router table again when I add the binding, so it's really just to get a nice finish and a conclusion to this video before we start thinking about next week's when we actually work on the body. Can you remember earlier when I mentioned about that emergency stop? This is the bit I was talking about. Wait for it. Luckily, I was paying attention and my cat-like reflexes spotted the screw from the bearing undoing itself very quickly. Nope. No rogue bearing to the face today, thank you. So after changing the router bit and my underwear, time to come back and finish the job. And here is the grand reveal. Not bad for a first effort on a fabric top. I must say it was really, really easy to actually do it this way. I definitely consider doing it this way in the future. My jury's still out on what I think of the fabric, but let me know what you think and see if we can make this look good in the end. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to see the rest of the build, and I'll be back next week making the body.